Some time ago, I was between a rock and a hard place. I had lost my job after our suppliers went through a major price hike, so a lot of the folks on the ground floor were cut. Strange how those cutbacks never seem to affect those on the higher floors. I was looking for something new on short notice. I had medical bills to pay, a bad shoulder, and I wasn't too stingy where the money came from. I did some less than legal repair work for people I used to work with, and I tried to make my savings last a little longer with high-risk investments. But I needed a cash infusion and I needed it fast. Browsing bulletin boards, online and otherwise, I stumbled on a guy who needed help. He needed an extra set of hands to go through some film. It wasn't very specific, so I figured he wanted to convert some VHS tapes to digital or something. The ad said no previous experience required, and it would take days, maybe weeks. Seemed easy enough, and he was offering a significant paycheck. I met the guy at a gas station just outside of town. He was hard to miss. He was close to 6'8" and had this olive oil slick kind of dark hair. He was built like a tank. Even sitting down, you could tell this guy was a monster. He walked up to me and I offered him a handshake. He didn't seem to know how to react. It took him a couple of seconds to shake it. When he finally spoke, he had the voice of a chain smoker, like he was always on the edge of a cough. "You here to help with the film?" he asked. "It seems like easy money to me," I said. "Where are we headed?" "Oh, it's not far. You drive." He got in my car but didn't use the seatbelt. I buckled up and nodded for him to do the same. It took a couple of seconds, but he figured it out. "You got a name there?" I asked. "Don't much like calling you big fella." "Herman." Herman it is." I introduced myself in kind. He brushed off a bug crawling up his arm and we were on our way. Not a great first impression, but I can't say it wasn't memorable. He was right about it not being that far. 2 turns down a bumpy dirt road and then parked next to a closed, chain-linked fence. We had to walk from there and it took about 10 minutes. We ended up near an old office building in what looked like a rundown scrapyard. The thing was mostly empty, probably abandoned for years, but there was still power running. I had lived in the area for a few years now and never even considered that this might have been here. It was the kind of place only a local kid running through the woods might keep track of. Herman opened the door for me and showed me inside. It wasn't too bad. It looked like he had been living out there for a while, using a portable kitchen stove to heat up little strips of squirrel meat and beans. Even so, it wasn't as disgusting as one might imagine. He couldn't have been there for long. Before we went any further, I turned to him. "I gotta say, Herman, this ain't the kind of environment that I thought we'd be working with." "It is." This whole setup doesn't exactly scream a wealthy film enthusiast, so I'm guessing there's something that you're not telling me. He gave me a long, tired look. I could tell he wasn't getting much sleep. "So what's the deal here? Drugs? Moonshine? What are you up to?" "He needs to be away from people." "He? Who's he?" Herman hesitated, and then nodded at me to follow. On the far side of the building, there was a makeshift bedroom. 2 mattresses propped up with wooden pallets. There was a man lying there surrounded by sponges, water bowls, and bottles of baby food. A lot of applesauce. Herman stopped me from getting too close. "He needs help, so we're helping." The guy didn't even look that old. 40 tops. Brown hair, gray eyes, a boxy-looking nose, and a freshly shaved face. He wasn't sleeping and he wasn't paying them any attention, just staring at the ceiling. "I take care of him," Herman continued, "and I need more help." "You want me to change diapers? That's gonna cost extra. That's not what I signed up for. You find the film, I take care of Emmett. Emmett, huh? Nice name. Herman nodded at that, still not a crack of a smile or a hint of sarcasm. He simply agreed. Yes, nice name. The final room of the building must have been a rec room at one point. It had been cleared out to make room for a couple of chairs, a movie projector, and a white screen. The rest of the far wall was just boxes. We're talking stacked floor to ceiling, box after box after box. All of them marked with various movie studio labels, some of which were still around, but the logos looked different. The whole place had this old chemical smell, like oil, plastic, and starch. Herman explained the setup. He had gotten a hold of a bunch of film reels, mostly 35mm from the 70s. He wasn't looking to convert it or edit it in any way. He needed help to browse through it and find one particular film. When I asked him what it was about, he was less than helpful. It's uncomfortable, he said. You'll know it when you see it. Are we talking something illegal, something that I shouldn't see? Illegal, no, he clarified, but something you shouldn't see. Apparently, he hadn't seen it himself, so there was no way to describe it. But he knew there was a copy somewhere in these boxes, and that I would know what it was when I saw it. There was no need to check out an entire reel. I would know if it was the right one. It took some time to get the projector up and running. There was power, sure, but you have to thread the film in a particular way in order. I checked out a couple of sites online and managed to figure it out. It didn't take long before I was rolling through reel after reel, checking a couple of minutes at a time before I switched to the next. Herman hadn't asked for it, but I made a couple of notes for each reel just to make sure that I cataloged what was what. That way there wouldn't be any questions about how much work I had done. Most of it was some kind of B footage, scrap scenes from movies that were unknown or never shown, a couple of dialogue scenes from what looked like a thriller, a couple of interviews, environmental footage, footage from various sports, even a couple of home videos. Pretty sure that I saw Ronald Reagan in one of them. By the end of the first day, I checked out maybe 1.5 hours of footage in total, maybe 2. Most of the time went to switching the reels. Judging by the number of boxes there was and the amount of film that each reel had, I figured Herman had gotten his hands on at least 1,500 miles of footage. No idea how he did it, but he did. At the end of the day, I was handed my first payment in cash. He didn't ask me to come back at a particular time. He just asked me to get it done. I still wasn't sure what exactly I was looking for, but it was easy money. I went home that day with a stuffed pocket, leaving a list of notes for Herman to review. He didn't, though. He spent most of his time taking care of the man in the bed. And coming home that night, I couldn't help but to wonder what I was getting into. I wasn't kidding myself. There was something less than legal going on here. You don't move out into a half-abandoned building just for privacy. You do it because you got something or someone to hide. But for now, they were paying the bills, but it was clear that I had to keep my eyes open. I figured it might be a good idea to bring something to protect myself. I didn't have a gun, but I had this flip knife for my home repair days. The thing didn't look like a knife, but it could cause some serious damage. If I were to face a monster like Herman someday, I'd rather not do it empty-handed. I went back for a couple of days, following the same routine. Check a reel, make a note, skip ahead a bit, check again, go to the next. Over and over and over. My right shoulder started to ache from the minutia of unspooling and threading the film through the projector. It's actually a pretty good workout. Those rolls are heavier than they look. But it was also a reminder that I had bills to pay. Herman was out for most of the day running errands. He would come back looking like he had been swimming and bringing something along every time. Sometimes food, sometimes supplies, sometimes money. One time he came back with a box of clothes for Emmett to try on. He really was a sort of caretaker for him, emptying his bedpan, washing him, changing his clothes. He'd roll him out of bed and put him in the wheelchair while he changed the bedding. They would go for walks sometimes, neither saying or doing anything. All the while, the reels would keep rolling. I did find a strange reel at one point. I wasn't sure if it was the right one, but I figured it wouldn't hurt to check with Herman. It was this amateurish clip of a woman in a blue sundress. It was clearly some backstage thing. You could tell it was a film set. She was smiling at the camera, rehearsing some lines, and then after a quick cut, she was outside. Her expression had changed, and she turned to the camera. It made me stop and check the settings. You see, I thought those old 35mm reels didn't have any sound, but it turns out that they do. It took me a little bit to figure out which button to press, but once I did, I could hear what she was saying. She was standing in the sun holding a paper, and then she looked straight into the camera. "Put the film away," she said. "Please put it away and don't come back." A young voice through an old speaker. I played it back, hearing her 2 more times, but there was something about her eyes. Something changed with every playback, like her stare was growing more intense. "Put the film away," it repeated. "Please put it away and don't come back, please." That last please, had she said it before? I wasn't sure. I turned the projector off, made a note, and got up to fetch Herman. By the time that I reached the door, I heard something. A burst of static. "Please." I ended up showing it to Herman. As I did, I couldn't help but feel guilty. It was just a reel of film, but it felt like I was hurting someone. Like I was on the cusp of committing some cardinal sin. Herman looked at the reel with great interest. The woman repeated her lines, swaying in the sun with her blue sundress. She made the same plea in the same tone, but something felt different. Less earnest, perhaps. I tried watching Herman rather than the reel, but there was nothing to see. He was stone-faced and he didn't much care for her emotional display. As the reel ended, he got out of his seat. "Right actor, wrong film." He handed me today's payment in mixed, crumpled-up bills, and he asked me to return in the morning. As he wandered off, he told the man in the wheelchair something with a whisper. And for the first time, the man moved. Not much, just a tilt of the head, as his eyes looked my way. I don't know how I know, but he smiled. He couldn't, but I know he did. I felt it. That night, I didn't so much sleep as fall unconscious. Probably the deepest sleep that I've ever had. I imagined myself on that movie set, in the hustle and bustle of the 70s. The jeans, the shirts, the hair. Somebody playing Kiss in the cafeteria. There was an old house by the coast, angry men in white shirts and fire, and that woman with the blue sundress. By the end of the night, I dreamt that she had approached me, putting both hands to my face and licking me in the jaws. Her fingers were so cold and thin, and as she opened her mouth to speak, the jaw kept extending, peeling off her face as a pale-bloodied skull exposed itself to me. "Please," a voice bleeding through dying electronics. I woke up in a cold sweat. I covered my face with my hands, trying to warm up my aching cheeks. It took me a while to notice that I had a new text message from Herman. He asked me to bring some spare clothes, whatever I could find. I had a box of my aunt's old stuff. She had passed the other year and I didn't have the heart to just throw it away. It wasn't much, but I figured I could put it to good use. I brought the box with me and figured I might as well get the day over with. There were dark clouds on the horizon as the sun struggled to pierce through the rain. It was going to be a pain in the butt to take that dirt road back home that night. Even on a good day, my tires would struggle to get all the way to the fence. So if it all turned into a muddy hell, it'd be a nightmare. Nightmare. All it took was the word for me to see that pleading face in the back of my mind. Not like a memory, more like you're hearing something from a great distance. Like when someone says your name in a crowd and you stop to listen. I made my way to the site and handed Herman the box. He put it away with an acknowledging nod. I got a good feeling about today, I said. I think we'll get it. He wasn't much for small talk. He agreed and returned to the bedridden man's side. There wasn't much else to say, and so I got to work. I found a couple more reels from what seemed like the same company. I recognized some set pieces and a couple of people. I didn't see the woman in the blue sundress, though. There were a couple of places that seemed familiar, but I couldn't tell from where. An old house by the coast, a deep cave, a fire. It felt like something that I had seen before. And then there she was. It was a shorter reel, simply marked Dawn. She wasn't wearing her blue sundress anymore. It must have been shot earlier. She just had a colorful shirt and a fancy pair of jeans. "Hello," she cheered. "I'm Dawn, or Miss Anderson if you're polite. I'm 5'4", 112 pounds, and I'm an absolute darling." I rolled my eyes a bit as she did a little twirl. It was some kind of casting reel, it seemed. As I leaned back in my seat, she relaxed her shoulders a bit. She dropped the act with a sigh, letting her face rest. "You need me to do the monologue again?" There was a noise from off-screen. There was a discussion. Meanwhile, the film kept rolling, centered on Dawn. She folded her hands, looking into the camera. She waved a little while she waited for the two men in the background to finish talking. "Hey you," she said. "Hey," I said back. It wasn't a conscious decision. She just had the kind of face that you wanted to say hello to. "Didn't I see you the other day?" she asked. "Are you still there?" I didn't respond. I just watched as her cheery demeanor faded. The background chatter was gone, leaving only her and the camera. She shook her head ever so carefully, and when she spoke, the camera barely picked it up. "Please don't do this." The reel clicked, snapping me back to attention. It felt like waking up for a second time. My heart was beating out of my chest, making me gasp for air. I got out of my chair to walk it off, only to notice Herman standing by the door. Right person, wrong film. So it's something about this woman. That's what I'm looking for. Yes. Look, not that I'm complaining, but if you already know what you're looking for, what do you need me for? You don't seem to be in a hurry to get out of here. He didn't say anything. Instead, he dropped the box that I had brought. I took a few things. He placed a couple of extra bills in the box, almost doubling what I was owed for the day. The man didn't seem to have any sense of money's worth, and where was he getting it from anyway? But I looked back at that white screen, and part of me wanted to play the reel again. Would it look different this time around? Would she say something else? But no, I kept going. As the rain kicked up, I decided to do a little overtime while it passed. I stayed a little longer and got to see Herman in the after hours, how he fed Emmett the applesauce, wiping at the corner of his mouth. They skipped the walk that night and settled for Herman silently reading by his side, some old leather-bound book. I looked through the boxes to see if I could find any other reels marked with Dawn or Anderson, something relating to the woman in the sundress. It took me a while, but there was one more. It was marked with her name and the word talent in a rough Sharpie. I set the reel up, checked the sound, and clicked it. She was on a stage at this time, panting for air. She had done something, maybe a dance. She was swaying her arms rhythmically like the music had just stopped. "Very good, Dawn," said a man off screen. "Very good, thank you very much." "Oh, thank you, Mr. Hampton." She looked back at the camera, just for a heartbeat. But it wasn't like she was looking at the camera, she was looking at me. Like noticing someone you know in an audience. "Would you care to describe to my co-writer here why exactly you are interested in starring in this production?" the man asked. "I think The Queen of the Black Sands is a fascinating story," she said. "I had never heard of it before, but once I read it, it was so intense. It's like the author knew me." "And did it resonate with you? How?" "Well, I wanted to be the queen," she smiled. "What girl doesn't?" I couldn't help but notice that she had a bit of a Texan accent. It wasn't obvious, but it shone through when she got excited. I think she was putting on a bit of a show, but there really was an excitement there. "Fair enough," said the man. "I've seen all that I need to see. You've got the part. You'll be the queen." She laughed, spun, and clapped. The men excused themselves, leaving her on stage for a bit. As the news sunk in, she was left holding her shoulders looking cold, and the reel just kept going. Footsteps had disappeared into the background, leaving her alone under the spotlight. For a few moments, it was just her and I, and then she looked at the camera. "Excuse me," she said. "It's a bit cold. You have something that I can borrow?" I waited for someone to respond, but no one did. She waved at the camera. "Hello," she sing-sang. "You there?" "Me?" "Yes, you," she said. "I don't see anybody else around." "You're not listening to me, you can't be." "Oh, sure I am." "All right," I said. "If you're listening, let's hear you say, Clinton was president." I figured I was just talking to a recording, but she just made it look so natural. But this would be the one thing that she couldn't possibly say. After all, it was filmed in the 70s. No Clinton for president back then. "All right, you got me," she laughed. "You got me there." The reel clicked and ended. I nodded and got up. I had been sitting down for a long time, so I stretched my legs. I went to go see Herman when I felt something in the room. The hair on my arm stood up as a chill tickled the back of my head. There was a click as the reel started to roll again. "Sorry, if you can get me something for the cold, I'll say the thing." I turned back to the screen. There she was, closer to the camera now as the frames flung by. I leaned back and picked up the first thing that I could fetch from my aunt's box of clothes. A blue kaftan. A bit quirky, but it was something. "Like this?" I asked. "Sure," she said. "I like the color." I approached the screen, clutching the fabric like a lifeline. The electricity in the air made my eyes water. I got closer, holding out the kaftan like I was feeding a slice of meat to a tiger. It got so bright that I had to close my eyes, and even then her silhouette was burned into my retinas, casting a pale brown figure in the dark behind my eyes. Something lightened from my hand as a cold finger touched it. "Thank you," said a calm voice, "but I'm dying to know." I backed away, shielded my face, and looked up. Through my teary eyes, I saw the woman wrap herself in something blue, and despite the vague colors and the struggling lights, I could see her smile. "Who's this Clinton fella?" This time the reel didn't just end, it snapped. The roll was cut in two and the slides crumbled into the machinery with a grating metal scrape. There was smoke and I could see one of the lights on the side turning a light red. I pulled the plug and hurried to save the reel, but I could barely touch the thing without burning my fingers. Seconds later, Herman burst into the room. He hurried to the projector, pushing me aside. He did it casually, but it's like he didn't know his own strength. He nearly bowled me over. He checked the reel and the cover, pulling out what remained of the film and threw it on the floor. "Keep going," he said as he cleared the reel. "Find her." "What for?" I asked. "What are you going to do?" "It's not your business." "It is my business," I argued. "I've never seen anything like this ever. I want to know what the hell we're doing." "Now get back to work." "I'm not going to." I headed for the door, but he blocked me. I pulled out my knife. I wasn't taking any chances. The problem with a guy like Herman is that you can't really do anything to get past their reach. He walked up to me as calm as can be as I frantically stabbed at him. He took out this thick piece of metal wire from his pocket and wrapped it around his hand like boxing tape. The moment that he was close enough for me to get a cut in, I lunged, but he stepped back, and the next moment, a sharp pain exploded off the side of my face. At some point, he had picked up a film reel and now he had smacked me over the head with it. I was so surprised that I lost all momentum. In the next breath, he had one hand on my wrist and one on my throat. I was thrown to the floor with the force that whiplashed my neck. My world went black for a second as my breath escaped me. "We finish this tonight," he said. "You have to do it." "Why?" I wheezed. "Why am I even here?" "Oh, because she's scared of me." He took my knife, folded it, and put it in his pocket. He took my phone, my wallet, all of it. And when he finally let go, he had made it very clear that he wasn't going to let me leave the room until it was all said and done. I checked for more reels with Dawn's name, but I couldn't find any. I went through 6 boxes, just reading the names on the side. Herman thought that I was stalling and made me say them out loud. Test Reel 5, Cliffside Capture 6 to 8, Roadside Ambience, Narration, Scenic Capture, Dinner Scene, Dialogue Cover, and then at the very bottom, lodged in between 2 much larger reels, The End of Eternity. That stood out. I held it up and showed it to Herman. He went over to check the cover. "Put it on. Emmett wants to see this." "What if I don't?" "Well, then I kill you and get someone else." He tightened his fist, emphasizing the wire strung around his hand. He wasn't joking. "Fine, then we're done." "Then we're done." He turned and left the room, closing the door behind him. The rain intensified, clattering against the metal roof. What I thought was going to be a passing downfall had turned into a creeping storm. The trees were swaying outside, brushing against the side of the building like a cat trying to get in. Little taps against the window as the occasional raindrop flew off course. I had to try something. I didn't know what was going to happen, but whatever it was, I didn't want it to happen. There was this pit in my stomach that I couldn't explain. So I took one of the chairs, pushed it up against the door handle, and put the film on. Maybe I could get ahead of whatever was about to happen. I turned the projector back on. It was the very start of the reel. The film seemed different than the others, clearer. The black color wasn't just black, it was no color at all. There was an opening scene with Dawn walking along a cliff. She was wearing a blue kaftan. My aunt's a blue kaftan. I ran up to the screen, feeling the electricity crackle in my ears. It was deafening, but I didn't care. "I don't know what this is, but he's coming," I said. "I don't know what they're gonna do." She turned her attention to the camera and blinked, as if she could hear the panic in my voice. She spoke with a slight delay. "Get out," she said. "Run." "I can't, I'm stuck. This guy, he's a monster, I know." She looked to the side and then back at the camera. She was torn, but then she held out a hand. It drifted through the screen, reaching for me in a brilliant light. I took it. She wasn't cold at all. "This way, let's go." Something thumped, and it wasn't my heart. Footsteps. I turned my head just in time to see a shadow looming over me, and in a heartbeat I was knocked halfway across the room. I smacked my shoulder into the floor with a crack. I hadn't heard Herman break the door open. He had pulled the wire between his hands like a garrote and wrapped it around Dawn's outstretched hand. He did it so smoothly, like he had practiced his entire life for that one thing. I had never seen anything like it. And before I could say no, he pulled. He pulled her out of the screen. I'll never forget the sounds. Her screams screeching through the speakers of the projector as she begged him to stop. I saw her shimmering arm turning dull, solid, and real. And the moment that her head passed through the screen, the speakers burned out and died, leaving her frantically scrambling to the floor like a wounded animal. Her majestic movie persona torn from the light and brought into the dark as flesh and blood. Herman wrapped the wire around her neck and pulled her to her feet. As he did, I saw the man in the wheelchair by the door. Except this time he was standing up, and he was clearly interested. I looked for a weapon, something, anything. I tried to pry the leg off a chair, but I couldn't get it loose. Instead, I saw the woman in my aunt's caftan lock eyes with the strange man. And in a moment of recognition, something happened. I heard a no. From her, from the dying speaker, and from inside of my head. It reverberated through my body as Herman tightened the wire. It's hard to explain the sensation. I could see her on the screen, and again when I closed my eyes, and again when I opened them. It's like I was watching every scenario play out at once, and in each and every one of them she was failing. I could feel myself pulling the leg of a chair loose, and at the same time I couldn't. I attacked Herman, and at the same time I didn't. He killed her, and he didn't. She got loose, but also not. In one of those places, we made it back through the screen. There was laughter, maybe a house in the suburbs, but it was just a flash of memories like waking from a dream. One possibility of many, and it failed. And then I was back on the floor scrambling to get my damn shoulder to turn the way that I wanted it to. But with every picture, every sensation, the memory would superimpose into my eyes, turning my vision into a blur of movement, shade, and outline. And one thing remained through it all. That no. It was screamed 1,000 times in 1,000 ways, and it all came back to pierce through me as a cold knife, pushing closer and closer to my heart until it finally stopped. I was on the floor, gasping for air. The leg of the chair never came off. Dawn's hair turned to dust as a bare skull was all that remained. Emmett stared into her empty sockets, smiling, his eyes clear and exuberant, his arms outstretched in an embrace. Herman snapped the wire tighter, making the skull pop off and topple to the floor with a dry clatter. Nothing but ash and a blue caftan remained. Emmett turned my way almost gleefully. "I think you deserve a rest," he said. "You're very tired." I wasn't, but suddenly I was, and I slept. There were no dreams waiting for me that night, no warmth, no voices in the dark, and no cliffside house, just a long darkness waiting for the morning. I was still on the floor when the sun broke through the clouds. A single ray of sunshine made its way through the windows, tickling my eyes. I sat up, my chest heavy. In the morning sun, it all looked so normal, just boxes and a projector. They had cleaned up the dust in the caftan. I stumbled my way out of the door, my neck feeling like it was made of lead. Herman was in the adjoining room packing up all their things. It seemed they were leaving. Emmett was outside. I could see him through a grease-stained window. Herman looked at me but said nothing. As I passed him, he put a hand on my shoulder. "Wait." He handed me back my cell phone, wallet, and even my knife. I looked up at him, considering whether to plunge it into his neck or not, I just didn't know anymore. "He wants to speak to you," he continued, "outside." Emmett was out in the morning light doing a little dance. It looked like a waltz. He was in a fantastic mood, snapping his fingers and tapping his feet. His smile didn't fail him as he turned to me. "Morning. A splendid day, wouldn't you say?" I unfolded my knife and held up a hand, silently asking him to keep his distance. "Dawn," I said, "what did you do?" "You mean the actress?" He laughed, twirled a little, and then returned his focus to me. His eyes were so intense that I could almost see them pulsating. "Oh, she died almost 30 years ago. There are plenty of articles about it, there really is." He laughed, doing another twirl. "Now, about your payment. I don't have any money for you, but let's see what we can do." He pondered for a moment, looking at my knife and then back up at me. Maybe I should remind you of that lottery ticket in your wallet. You must have forgotten about it. I think it is quite the jackpot." "There's no lottery ticket in my wallet." "Are you sure?" I was sure, but now that he mentioned it, I wasn't. I had bought a couple in the past, and maybe one stuck around. I had been so sure there wasn't one, but now I don't know. It was an alien feeling, like I was equally sure of two things at once, that I had one and that I hadn't. But looking in my wallet, there it was. But it was one of those scratch-offs, not a lottery one. "You should scratch it. You have a knife after all." "Or I could cut you, I could do that too." "Oh, you could try." But what was the point? She was gone. He had gotten whatever he had needed from that reel. I just stared blankly at my wallet for a second, trying to figure out if I really was this forgetful. And then Emmett pushed past me as if he knew I wasn't going to cut him. He turned to me a final time. "It's going to be a wonderful day. Enjoy it while it lasts." The last thing that I saw of them was Herman dropping a box to the ground and then tossing a film reel into it. Emmett came around with his hands in his pockets, and in the blink of an eye, the box was on fire. I hadn't seen it catch fire. It was more like something had shifted, like the air around the box was replaced with flame. It made my head hurt, and I could almost hear the reel of the film still going in my head. And if I listened hard enough, I could still hear that no. I walked away. I got in my car and I scratched my ticket. $825,000 super jackpot. I want to say that I called the police or that I told everyone I knew about this, but honestly I didn't. There was nothing that I could say that anyone would believe. But that ticket was something real, something that you could touch and use. It was enough to convince me that whatever I had felt or seen was something that I could try to forget. It's been some time since that night. I did look up the articles about Dawn Anderson, and it's true. She died in the 90s, not long after giving birth to her one and only son. Someone who the articles never referred to by name. Privacy reasons, I suppose. It was described as a freak accident. Some kind of allergic reaction to a moth infestation in her home. I've since gotten back on my feet. This kind of money can get you pretty far. Not far enough to retire, but far enough to ease the worries off your shoulders for a while. I could start my own business and get a decent place to live, pay my medical bills even, and I'm just getting started, but things are going well so far. I've never told anyone about this in real life, and I don't think I ever will. Even now, I still feel this intense guilt, and I don't even know why. I don't think I'll ever truly understand, and I don't think that I meant to. I think at the end of the day, I was just meant to do a job and go on my merry way. Or perhaps I wasn't meant to be there at all. Maybe no one was.
Susan Corn, Daggy, Rain, Nelson Asada, Dice, Creamy, Me, Cashier, Tom Macara, That One Woodsman, Sonic, GMT, Leon Nog, Takio, Zarilla, Nina Lynn Kidder, Swat, Damon, Corey, Martin, Fleming, yours truly, Dino, SKV, Wayward Son, Deus Ex